Hey, what's up? Abby here, and I'm making a video talking about the state of Frost DK currently in the pre-patch for BfA. And this is not talking about what they're going to be like when the actual expansion comes out, because I have absolutely no clue, and I'll talk about leveling and stuff in a different video. This is just talking about Frost DK right now in Antaros. So currently Frost DK is performing above middle of the pack, as we can see from Warcraft logs. And Sims in general, Frost DK is performing fairly well. Unholy right now is about middle of the pack in terms of when we look at 75th percentile to about 99th percentile. And Frost DK is near the top. It's right outside top 5 from what we've seen. And you can go look that up on Warcraft logs. I'll put a link down below. But let's actually go over what Frost DK is using right now. So I'm going to go over some different talent rows and why we pick certain talents. So this setup you see right here for me is what sims best for me. There are certain talents that are going to be exchangeable, such as you may see people running Murderous Efficiency, Horn of Winter. You may even see people running Icy Talents. You see a lot of people running Frost Scythe now over Frozen Pulse. You may see some Froststorm Furies in there. And of course these two talent rows are pretty interchangeable. But one consistent talent that you're going to see in all of this is Breath of Sindragosa. It is the talent that is run currently. The only fight I've ever seen a different talent run on is Eonar. I've seen Obliteration, Ice Cat run on Eonar. However, right now, that's not really a fight we want to go over for meta. But right now, Breath of Sindragosa is the go-to talent. So let's go over each row. We have row 56, which right now, as you can see, I'm running Cold Heart. And there are a couple reasons why I'm running Cold Heart. So let's go over them. Number one, Cold Heart does stack up with the chest, meaning you get 2 separate stacks of 20. It doesn't override it to give you 20 stacks faster or anything. It gives you 2 stacks of 20 because they are different chains of ice. They do different damage. The chest, of course, does a lot more damage, as you can see right here. Gain 363 shadow frost damage per stack, and right here it's 245. So significantly more damage from the chest, but that doesn't really matter because we're running both. And the other synergy we have is with Pillar of Frost. So as you can see, I have Cold Heart right next to Pillar of Frost, and this is because I want to sync these two up very, very close together. Well, actually, I just want to sync them up together, and I think I'm running the wrong gear set here. No, I'm not running chest in this gear set. Not sure about that, but I am running Toravons with this build, and the simple reason why I'm running Toravons is because it does affect both Cold Hearts, the chest, which does Shadow Frost damage, as you just saw, and the talent does straight up frost damage. Both are affected by the frost damage increase from Toravons. And with Pillar of Frost, what I am doing is I'm using my Chains of Ice at the end of my Pillar, because you do gain a strength bonus for each rune you spend during Pillar. You get a 1% per rune. That means one Obliterate is 2% increase of strength. You can usually get about a 12 to 15% strength increase from Pillar. During Breath, it can be higher, just because if you get lucky on Frost Empowerment, if you're running Murderous Efficiency and you get lucky on some of those, there are just different ways for you to increase the strength bonus of that. But getting that bonus strength, getting the Pillar Frost damage increased, the frost damage straight up increased, does sync up with these two talents, making this talent a very powerful one to run currently. And next up, we have row 57. All of these are viable talents. These are all really close. You want to sim each one of these talents in this row, because I've seen people sim highest with Horn of Winter. I have seen people sim highest with Murderous Efficiency. At one point I did before I changed up my gear. And most people sim highest with Runic Attenuation currently, or just use Runic Attenuation currently, because it's a lot more consistent than the Murderous Efficiency. But Horn of Winter is always that guaranteed. However, it is a little bit annoying to sync up with Breath. Next up, we have Tier 60. Tier 60 is pretty cut and dry between Frozen Pulse and Frost Scythe. Now, what you may be wondering is why you're running Frost Scythe on single target. And that's because it does do frost damage. So it does sync up really well with our Mastery. So you do get a way to consume your Killing Machine procs that does stack up with your Mastery. And because of course, Killing Machine procs guarantee a crit, and Frost Scythe crits deal 4 times normal damage. Stacking that up with your Mastery, it can lead to some pretty crazy Frost Scythe hits. And for the 1 rune cost over the 2 rune cost, this can be better spent into Frost Scythe currently. So that's why you're going to see Frost Scythe being picked over Frozen Pulse in a lot of instances. However, Frozen Pulse is a little bit easier to play with. Frost Scythe requires pretty high concentration because you have to really make sure you're pressing Frost Scythe on your Killing Machine procs. You don't want to waste them on Obliterate if you can use them into Frost Scythe, because it's going to be better spent with 1 rune put into that does about equal damage instead of 2 runes put into that, because currently our spec is very starved. This is another reason why Frost Scythe is so good. Our spec is currently experiencing a lot of downtime. Currently, Frost is experiencing about a 20 or higher percent downtime in a boss encounter, which is crazy high. 20% of the boss fight, you're not going to be able to press any buttons. That's ridiculous to me. And running Frost Scythe will, make it a little bit easier to lower that downtime a bit. However, Frozen Pulse does do a decent amount of damage. Because we're starved so much, just plays into Frozen Pulse, which plays off of you being starved anyway. So, I mean, both have great synergy with the current downtime of Breath of Sindragosa build. Next up, tier 90. Gathering Storm is pretty straightforward choice in this row. However, there are some fights, AoE fights more importantly, where Frostmourne's Fury is valuable. Mostly just ENR. And I did try it out on Portal Keeper this week, and it did do very well. So it is viable on those kind of fights. It's great in Mythic Plus, especially with the pants. You get a Frostmourne's Fury every 1.5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. Every 1 minute 30 seconds, being able to use an ability that hits like an absolute truck is really nice. And it's a lot easier to play with than Gathering Storm, which does require a little bit of resource pulling before you use Remorseless Winter. Very easy to get used to, but it does require a little bit of attention. And in AoE situations, straight up AoE situations, Glacial Advance is very powerful. It's an AoE Runic Power dump. We haven't had one of those in an incredibly long time, besides Breath of Sindragosa. I don't know if we ever really had any. So, very cool to have an AoE Runic Power dump. It also synergizes very well with Frost Scythe, where it applies Razor Ice to everything you hit with it, thus applying Razor Ice stacks. Razor Ice stacks, each stack gives you 3% extra frost damage on target. Frost Scythe doing frost damage, so as you can see, these two have phenomenal synergy. And of course, the last tier, it's pretty cut and dry Breath of Sindragosa right now. Again, I said Obliteration is viable in heavy AoE situations, where AoE would exist also pretty heavily outside of Breath of Sindragosa, so like big AoE dungeons in Mythic Plus, such as, for instance, Maw of Souls. There's some pretty big pulls that can last a while and very consistent big pulls, so Obliteration may be worth experimenting in that. But right now in Raid, from what I've seen, every boss encounter, most Frost DKs are running Breath of Sindragosa, so pretty cut and dry. Ice Cap is not very viable right now. It just doesn't provide nearly as much DPS as the other two. In fact, it's quite significantly lower than the other two. Now let's go over some legendary stuff and stuff like that. I know I have Sephu's on right now, but actually Cold Heart would be put in this place, and then I would just wear my best ring, which is somewhere over here. I just don't want to spend the time to put it on. Actually, it's right there. I just saw it, and then I would put on my Cold Heart, and this would be my setup. I would use Bracers and Cold Heart. For Trinkets, I would 100% use Khaz'goroth. This is going to sim the highest most of the time. The proc does a ton of damage, and it has a lot of strength on it, leading to it being, without a doubt, our best trinket currently. Seeping Scourgewing is incredibly high, though, as well, because it does do a ton of damage also. So do I have some damage here, as you can see, from just a little bit of hitting on a target on me. Shadow Strike hit, how many times did it hit? 3 times, and it did that much damage. And then, of course, we have our Isolated Strike, which still does a ton of damage. The Seeping Scourgewing is just incredibly powerful. The Agrimar trinkets, Gorshlak's Legacy is also very powerful, so that's also a trinket worth experimenting with. Tony's Promise from Karazhan. These are just trinkets that have procs that deal damage. They're incredibly powerful right now, those kind of trinkets. The ones that were big stat sticks before aren't nearly as powerful anymore as these. So, currently, try out these kind of trinkets. Definitely get yourself a really good Seeping Scourgewing. Some other items worth noting are Jeweled Signet of Melandris. Increases your auto attack damage. If I bring this up again, you can see how high my melee damage is. It's just crazy how much melee is hitting for nowadays. So getting a ring that increases that melee damage by 10% is very, very strong and should be probably farmed for if you don't already have it, if you really want to parse pre-patch. It doesn't really matter, but if you want to. And last but not least, our 4-piece isn't nearly as strong as it was. As you can see, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but the main synergy that this 4-piece had before the pre-patch was the synergy with Shattering Strikes, the previous talent. Because it was constantly consuming our Razor Ice stacks, this 4-piece would, every time it hit the giant frost spikes, it would apply 3 stacks of Razor Ice, which was really nice for continuing to generate Razor Ice for Shattering Strikes. We don't have that anymore, so that synergy is gone, definitely reducing how effective the 4-piece is nowadays. And also, just in general, if you do have higher item level pieces, they might sim higher than your 4-piece. You might end up breaking up your 4-piece for higher item level, so I would highly recommend to sim yourself. And with everything I say, please sim yourself. Don't just run this build because it's here. Sim Murder Sufficiency, Horn of Winter, Frost Scythe, even sim Icy Talons if you want to. Sim Frostworm's Fury. Sim every combination you can to get what's best for you, because my stat weights are definitely going to be different than yours because we don't have the exact same gear. And I hope that you guys found this video informative, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.